Welcome to the Trends from the Trenches podcast, co-produced by BioTeam and BioIT World. I'm your new host, Ari Berman, CEO of BioTeam. Today, I have the joy and honor to interview one of the most influential people in my life and the former host of this podcast, my friend Stan Gloss. Stan started his career as a respiratory therapist, followed by an extensive career in business development across several organizations, including at AVAKI Corporation and Blackstone Computing. While at Blackstone, Stan led the sales initiative that launched the company into the life sciences market. His team consisted of Chris Dagdigian, Bill Van Etten, and Michael Athanas, led by Matthew Tronnell. They were actually named BioTeam by Matthew. The four of them eventually split off to form BioTeam in 2002. Stan became the CEO, and along with Chris and Bill, they grew the company until 2019, when Stan asked me to take over as CEO. Now, 23 years later, we're still going strong and making science go faster. Today, Stan and I will talk about his journey as the founding CEO of BioTeam, the things he learned along the way, words of wisdom for people on similar journeys, what he's most proud of, and what's next for him. I'm really excited about this interview. Stan, welcome to your own podcast.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, when you stop and think about it. First, I handed off my company to you as the CEO, and now I'm handing off my podcast to you. And in both cases, I feel very confident in the work that you've done and your ability to represent science like I represent science, and how important it was. And for most people who don't realize, the year I founded BioTeam was the year that my father passed away with pancreatic cancer. And I wanted to do something to help families like mine. And being able to put together a team that accelerates scientific discovery, it was really the pinnacle of my career. I always say that, with BioTeam, probably will never win a Nobel Prize, but I wouldn't be surprised if we help somebody win a Nobel Prize. So it's a pleasure and honor to be here with you. And by the way, this is the first time I've been interviewed on my own podcast.
It may be a first ever, but here you go. Thanks for that. And that's the perfect segue kind of into the first question. Tell me about the beginnings of BioTeam. What led you all to form the company?
Yeah, so the funny story, which most people don't realize, is that my house abuts a tennis club, and my best friend was walking through my backyard, and she knew I was looking for something different to do. So she said, "Hey, I met this woman up at the tennis club. She's recruiting for a business development person for a new biotech company, and it was at the time of the dot-com boom, and they couldn't find any business development people." But she said, "Hey, you make good relationships, and you know about science. Maybe you should talk to her." And one thing led to the next, and that was where Blackstone came into my life. And Matthew Tronnell was the person who interviewed me, and he's very well known in our industry. And he was actually BioTeam employee zero. And Michael and I and Bill and Chris all met there. And, one thing led to the next. And then we helped them secure about 12 or $16 million of funding. But they wanted to become a software company, and we wanted to continue our consulting. So at that point, we decided to go off on our own, and that was 22 years ago. And the amazing part of the story is this company was founded with exactly $1,000, $250 from each founder to incorporate in the state of Massachusetts. We never looked back, and we never needed to take a dime from anybody. So for entrepreneurs out there who think you just can't start a business for $1,000, I want to let you all know you can, and you can be quite successful at it. But the key to success is, in this situation, is finding a place where you can add value and solve problems. So what we saw in the beginning and what I learned at Blackstone was there's a chasm between science and information technology. Scientists speak the scientific method, and engineers talk specifications and technical, all of that. The intersection between those two groups is really one that was not well served. We came into these accounts where people couldn't talk to each other. So being able to come in as scientists and to be able to communicate with technical people at their level and meet them where they are has really been a hallmark to what we have been doing for 22 years. And for me, as a business development, I had the easiest job because the staff that I worked with was so talented. And originally, Bill Van Etten, Chris Dagdigian, and Michael Athenas were all rock stars on their own. All I had to do was open a relationship with potential clients and introduce them and stay out of the way and let scientists and technical people hash it out in the room and then come up with the solution and then help them solve it. So that was one of the things that Chris always liked about me as a business development person, is that I let them do their work and I just sat back and didn't try to sell anybody anything. You know, at the end of the day, it was always about solving somebody's problem. And if we could solve it, we helped them. If we didn't, we didn't.
Weren't you the last person to join BioTeam? Didn't they have to convince you?
Yes. And that was actually a true story. And the reason for that was that I'm, as a healthcare practitioner, I'm completely nuts about not having healthcare coverage. And in a new startup company, we had no healthcare coverage. So I kept looking for jobs until one day my wife came to me and said, you know, I'll go back to work and get the healthcare benefits. You need to start this company. It's been your dream since I've met you. So honestly, it was the reason I was in is really that. And also another little side story. That year, my father passed away with pancreatic cancer. Being a Jewish family, we had a shiva. And Michael, Chris, and Bill came to the shiva and paid their condolences to my family and, said something to my mom. And I remember distinctly my mom saying, I said, Mom, I don't know what to do. I don't have healthcare coverage, but I want to start this business. And she said, well, who? I said, remember those guys from the shiver? Oh, those guys? That you should do. You should absolutely go into business with them. So between my wife and my mom, they were the deciding factors that tipped the scale. And, you know, sometimes in a tipping a scale can be as little as a single grain of rice. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't take much to tip a scale, but when it tips, it tips. So I ended up jumping in and rode this for 22 years, complete. And for people who are entrepreneurs, bootstrapping is when you kind of just live off of what you do yourself. You don't take money from anybody. Some months you get paid, some months you don't, and all of that. We bootstrapped BioTeam for 22 years, and a lot of people go, "That's crazy too."
It is.
But we've done a lot of crazy things,
but fun things.
Yeah, for sure.
Curious how your history with dyslexia influenced how you ran the company.
Well, thanks for asking that, Ari, because for the people who know me and maybe who don't, I've been dyslexic my whole life. And one of the things I'm finding out about dyslexia is that you tend to, because we struggle to read at times, and that's what happens in school, we learn to find creative workarounds to reading. whether it's filling in words that didn't exist and kind of predicting what the sentence means, or for me, it was study groups and study guides and doing all these other things to find ways to cement the knowledge in my brain. It turns out that those skills in creative problem solving and looking at incomplete data and trying to derive meaning from incomplete data, this turns out to be a valuable skill for an entrepreneur. So there was a study by Julie Logan back in 2009 where she looked at a group of entrepreneurs, and what she found out from her group was that between 20 and 30% of entrepreneurs actually have dyslexia. So it's quite common in the entrepreneurial community. We can think of people like Richard Branson, Steve Jobs, many different, the founder of Cisco, Charles Schwab, all of these famous dyslexic entrepreneurs. So, and in fact, I am currently a doctoral candidate at Southern New Hampshire University, and my dissertation will be all about dyslexia, entrepreneurship, and the skills of innovation, because dyslexic people have to learn how to be innovative. So I want to study that dynamic, and stay tuned. That will be some fun research to present to the community.
That's awesome. It's interesting because you and I over the years have had a lot of discussions about neurotypes and how they influence people. I myself am ADHD, and if you harness them right, there can be superpowers associated with them. And I think that's kind of what you're talking about. Your pattern recognition in places where no one else can see patterns, that's been a real power. And as you said, it's that power of being able to impute missing data much better than others.
Yeah. Recently I woke up one morning and what good conversation couldn't be made better by mentioning the words artificial intelligence, right? You got to say it you got to have the obligatory AI thing in there.
And now we have it here.
Yes. So the reason where I'm going with that is I woke up one morning and started thinking about large language models. And it just came to me that the brain of a dyslexic actually works more like a large language model than it does a search engine. We don't recover and bring out facts like a search engine, but we derive things out of patterns. We predict what's going to happen from a series of events that we know about. So, we have this training set that we have, and we derive information. And so I thought, gee, that's really interesting, because when I'm working with AI, and I'm the first student on my campus with an actual accommodation to use AI at the doctoral level, which is really crazy. But I wondered why it was just so satisfying to work with it. And it felt the same as if I were going to a meeting with 100 successful dyslexics. I never have to explain why I'm dyslexic or dyslexia. Everybody understands how we think, and we all think alike. So it kind of felt like that experience reincarnated through more an augmented intelligence than anything artificial, because I don't think there's anything artificial about artificial intelligence. For me, it's all about augmented intelligence. And this has been talked about for 50 or 60 years, that computers would be our partners and we co-create with them. So that's kind of my obligatory AI story.
Thank you for bringing that in. Now we can move on.
Are you enjoying the conversation? We'd love to hear from you. Please subscribe to the podcast and give us a rating. It helps other people find and join the conversation. If you've got speaker or topic ideas, we'd love to hear those too. You can send them in a podcast review.
What were some of the biggest lessons you learned from BioTeam?
Well, one, when you found a company and you really don't know from day to day in the beginning whether you will ever survive. And I think one, it's knowing that you can help people and solve a real something that somebody is struggling with to do. And back in the day when we first started this company, all the short read sequencers were just coming onto the market. So the 454 and Solera, which became Illumina, and, everybody was racing to do blast searches and all of that. Now we don't even talk about doing blasts that much anymore. It's,
It's still done, but
it's still done, but it's just not like it was in the beginning. So being able to find places where you can add value and help people relieve the struggles that they're having it's essential. You shouldn't go into business for any other reason than that and found a business if you're not solving. All the great technology in the world is useless unless it solves a specific problem that somebody has. The other thing I definitely learned was the founders, how important it is to know the person and see each of the founders with all the skill sets that they have and putting together a complementary team. I look at what they do, and, part of my drive to get my doctoral degree is because I've worked with so many amazing doctors in our company. I admired all of you who have doctoral degrees, and it inspired me to see how people view the way your knowledge and the ability to articulate the knowledge, that it inspired me to actually want to go back to school and do the same things that you guys did, just because I could. So learning that, it always boils down to relationships. At the end of the day, everything boils down to a relationship, and relationships are delicate. Like, they're kind of, think of them like orchids. They need the right light. They need the right food. They need, the right watering, all of that. And they bloom and they make beautiful flowers, but they're delicate. And you have to treat your relationships as the most important asset that you have is your relationship. It's not the money. It's not the project. It's not anything else. It's always about the relationship and how I can, deliver value. I mean, one of the lessons that I've taught everybody in the company is to lead with generosity. Be generous with your time, with your thoughts. Help, be there. If you can help somebody and it doesn't turn into a piece of business, so be it. You've helped somebody. And that's part of the core DNA that I hoped to have left the company with to continue on.
It's an increasingly vanishing sentiment these days. It's getting harder and harder to find people who default that way. But I think I learned that lesson very well. I think I defaulted to it, but you taught me even more. And as a company, we definitely try to operate that way. Look, we're here to help,
Yeah.
We have to make money, but mostly we're here to help. And that's...
And here to do good science and help good science, because the world needs more good science. I don't care what anybody you hear in the news and other things about people questioning science and scientists. Mm-hmm. The science is the way we get through all the challenges that we've always faced, whether it was pandemics, financial crises, anything.
Yeah.
There's always a science behind doing this and experimenting, and we don't always succeed at first try, but, ask, Thomas Edison, another fellow dyslexic who had 10,000 things that didn't work. He never failed. He just had 10,000 things that didn't work. And that is spoken like a true scientist.
Yeah, I think I've told you before that you have to be a little crazy to be a scientist because it's 99% abject failure and 1% something worked, but 1% of that was actually real and 1% of that gets out. So that's when you're asking questions, trying to answer questions no one's ever thought to ask. It makes a really interesting reality for you.
Yeah.
Just a couple more questions as we wind down here. What are you most proud of from your time with BioTeam?
Oh, man, so much. I think the proudest I am is, one, seeing the people who've come to BioTeam, who've come in as, engineers. They've stayed, they've contributed to the company, they've left, they became vice presidents of engineering. I know that nobody's comes to BioTeam to stay forever, and that other people will get recruited and take on better positions. But every time I see somebody get a better job and know that it was the experience that they got for as long as they stayed here, there's nothing, that makes me more proud. Boy, just being with the team in the last year or so, watching them go through the transition from, Chris and I's leadership now to working with the N Square group and taking on a really new challenge and rising to that challenge, showed me a part of resilience that really made me proud, because as a dyslexic, you have to learn to be resilient, and to think that I had a part in growing a company that has resilience built into it. And it's just the people that I've come in contact with at BioTeam. And then there are so many people in the industry that I know and consider, industry friends, and that I am just honored that had been able to serve so many companies. I mean, I think, some of the work that you and the team have done with NIH and the BioWolf, and that BioWolf was part of the, Moderna using it to design a vaccine for the pandemic. To know that we had a tangential piece of that was just, it's quite an honor. And I'll tell you another thing I'm proud of, and actually you were a part of it too. The work that we did with the ACE, the African Centers of Excellence, and to have taken our bioinformatics knowledge and expertise and exported it to countries that really don't have the infrastructures and don't have so some of the seeds that we planted years and years ago in that project they're now graduating masters and PhDs in bioinformatics. So I think that's really something to look back and feel completely proud about.
That's awesome. I love that project too. I was deeply involved for 8 years, and to see these people who came out of 20 people villages that didn't have any electricity come up with very novel ways of approaching things like analyzing HIV it's magical. That's the light we need in this world, and really proud of that. All right, well, just 2 quick questions, hopefully. What words of wisdom do you have for people on similar journeys that you took?
Don't listen to the naysayers, and don't let people define what you can and cannot do because you've been given a label. No label, and look for the strengths. Because part of my research is on compensatory strategies, and our bodies always compensate. The other thing I want to say is that we're all neurodiverse. Our brains are like our fingerprints. They're unique. We all process things differently. So I really think that there isn't, a limitation. There's just different processing styles and understanding. And I think I'm going to bring AI back in again, because I think the potential for what AI can do in education to really individualize it, learning to the neurotypes of the learner, is one of the things that makes me excited to wake up in the morning now.
That's awesome. I love that. And I think those tools are only going to get better and will help people learn to communicate with each other better, ultimately.
I hope so.
I hope so, too. So my last question was going to be about your doctoral degree that you're working on. But since you already brought that up, as you gracefully move on from BioTeam, which makes me both very happy and proud that you're doing that, and also a little nostalgic for the many, many years we spent together here. What's next for you?
Well, certainly looking at the combination of artificial intelligence in education, because I'm actually pioneering many techniques now that I'm learning to design and to do for my own work, which I would love to be able to share. And then I have a book in the works, so we will, I don't want to spill the beans right now, but I will be, in the next year or so, coming out with a book for organizational behavior and how organizations work. So I'm really excited to sit down and finally give back to everybody who shared with me. So this is my moment that I can now sit back, not have to think about working, and only think about sharing, which is very exciting for the rest of my career.
Well, I can tell you, you have earned it, and then some. It's been an honor, Stan, in every way I can imagine.
It's been an honor working with you and being able to hand things off to you, but it's an honor I will always be a BioTeamer. I will always, carry that with me wherever I go with pride and honor, because honestly, we are so fortunate to have worked with so many amazing people. And it's my pleasure, and I look forward to hopefully keeping these friendships going. And we'll continue on. Maybe we'll come back and talk about my research someday.
I would love that. And we're definitely going out for some drinks and dinner. Well, listen, Stan, it's been just a pleasure and an honor to interview you on your podcast, and kind of as a handoff. And, I'm grateful. Clearly, I wouldn't be here right now in this position or with BioTeam and making the differences we had if you hadn't plucked me out of where I was and, helped drive things forward. I've learned a lot from you, and I will be forever grateful and forever your friend.
Yes, me too. Take care. Thank you, Ari.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.